Okay, so I am now recording, and we're going to go through what I meant by using the TheraBand on a door. Okay, and the idea here was really to have a door that was closed and secure. So I'm hoping that's going to work. And then I have a pretty durable or thicker TheraBand right here. And what I want to practice is developing dexterity in my feet so I can get really specific in shifting weight and feeling elasticity of different qualities. And much like keeping my hands alive, I want to be able to feel my body weight in a traction scenario. So one of the things I can do is just kind of stand here like I'm water skiing and start to lean back a little bit and just see how I use my body and play around with the elasticity of the band as I'm shifting my weight. You know, I can be here, I can lean forward, I can gather it up and play around with shifting my weight. So this is me shifting weight, not using my arms. I'm just surrendering, leaning back, coming forward. Okay, it's different than me doing this. So this keeps my feet awake in different directions. I can move forward a little bit and still have a little bit of traction. I can shift weight side to side, up and down. And with the resistance of the band, it puts my body more in context as if I'm working with a leg or an arm or maybe something even larger. You know, I'm kind of playing with all of their weight, kind of the water skiing idea. So that was the intent behind that. Okay, great. Okay. So yeah, one person, because I was playing with the arm, it was kind of misinterpreted as playing with the door this way. Okay. Oh, other than doorknobs? If you have poles in the middle of your place, they work too. You know, there might be a way for you to, if you were to open the door, let's look at this. This has a handle on the inside, but if you had a traditional doorknob, I don't have traditional doorknobs, I'm so sorry. But if you did, you could go on the inside of the door, wrap it around the doorknob, and then close the door. It would be secure on the inside of the doorknob or on the inside of the door around that doorknob so that you could have like secure attachments so the door's not gonna swing open, that kind of an idea, or it's not gonna slip off of the doorknob. Does that help, Marty? That would be my quick alternative to having.
That helps a lot, thank you.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So again, you know, a lot of these ideas are really just to keep us alive and awake with the feeling qualities that are unique to this approach. And much like I've asked you to find other people to work on or go out of your comfort zone, last week I have two people coming to me now that I said, hey, I'm doing this class, I'm inviting people to step out of their comfort zone, explore what's new and different maybe, and they started coming. One's an Iraqi vet, or I'm sorry, an Afghanistan vet, 4 tours of duty as a machine gunner and has done a beautiful job in de-escalating. Actually, through flotation tank therapy is what did it for him. But there's plenty there to work on. And he's this kind of like a gladiator type of guy, very fit, muscular, some hypermobility in some areas. And then it's his partner, his wife, who's so much smaller. And I found that when I worked with her, you know, I had to adapt to such a great degree because she's smaller than all of my clients. So, and I found that my initial adaptation were still not appropriate to her size. So it was a perfect illustration that however we can stay on top of our game by circling back around large bodies, small bodies, mobile bodies, not so mobile. It's really useful. Now for them, I'm actually going to go do some movements that I haven't done in a while because of my clientele. And I'm going to be going through the same process that much like I have on the homework. So, but this one will, I think, with the doorknob, really help with body mechanics and body usage. And so you can add that to the balloons. Where I think I have some small slinkies there to help with some subtle things, subtle weight, but the larger slinkies. Oh, I have something. I'll have it for next time. But if you have a slinky, you can grab the end of it. You can kind of jiggle it and create waves through the slinky. And you can get forearm activity, wrist movement, some of the subtler, like kind of spherical motions. And this is with a small slinky or slinky mini. It's got like a 2 or 3 inch diameter. But that allows you to do the little Traeger hand thing and create different movements. So that can be fun. And I think it fell out of my bag that was in the closet. So I'll have that for next week. I have some water balloons. I want to show you one more thing. Let me get Elizabeth into the room. Okay, so good morning, Elizabeth. Yeah, hang on, I'm going to carry this, but let me get some out of the bag for you, Martin. I have 12-inch party balloons. But I would suggest, too, that if you can get 14-inch or 16-inch, so you can blow them up larger without stressing them with the water, there'll be a lot of elasticity to play with. You know, so this is a 12-inch balloon, and I might have it at about a 7-inch diameter. So the thing here is, while the size is smaller, the weight is about that of a head. If I were to fill this up so that it's larger, it might be it would be like a really heavy head. Right? Kind of like somebody is, when you I'm sure you felt this. You lift up their head, and you're lifting like all 160 or 70 pounds of them because they're just so stuck to the rest of themselves. Okay. So again, you can play with, these are 12-inch balloons blown up maybe 60%. You get a larger balloon, blow that up even larger, but about 60%. You won't make a mess. Okay. Now, this is going to just speak to the idea of working with people with limited range of motion. And I don't know if I told the story in this series, but I may have in the last one. But for those that haven't gone back through everything that I have online, there's a story about adapting this work to an extraordinary degree, but still finding that it had fabulous impact. And the water balloon can help you get there. When I was in Japan back in like 98, I think, or 99, I was like going around the entire country being handed off by interested party to the next interested party, and often just put in a room. People would show up, I do sessions, and then I might do that for 2 days and then go to the next place. I did that for about 14 weeks. And one of the places that I went, we hopped in the car and drove off. So I said, what are we doing? And Kasumi didn't speak any English. So she looks at me, she says, young man fever. I'm thinking, okay, well, I have no idea. And I get there, and here's this young man in his like early 30s who had rheumatic fever and now was frozen in a wheelchair. So his posture was the wheelchair. You know, he was just like this. And you could kind of look behind himself. Had maybe about 10 degrees range of motion in terms of spinal rotation, thoracic spinal rotation, but literally frozen. So I put him up on the table, and he had the posture of the chair. And we bolstered him to the gills. And I was at the stage in my practice with this stuff that it was about movement. And I had never worked with anything like this. So I had to find how to move this guy. And it was all vibration. It was all jiggling. So I'll get in close on the balloon. And I literally, for an hour and 15 minutes, everywhere I could find movement, did something like this. I do a little bit, catch it. And I would get tired because I wasn't used to this, how to anchor the upper part of my body so that I could get this feeling. So I had to do that. I had to sit on the table a lot to find spots. And that's literally what I did. I just did this little, sending little waves. That was all the movement that was available. And literally, for this young man, we asked him how he was doing, and he said, I feel as big as a cloud, or as big as the sky. And this literally doubled his range of motion. So for me, it was imperceptible, but he was like, look, he got like all this other peripheral vision that he didn't have before. And it was, again, you taking these ideas and figuring out how to movement, pausing. If there was, I could come under the arm that was frozen in the shape and lift it a little bit so that it wasn't just like hanging and getting stuck against its structure. I could lift it a little bit and then shift my weight a little bit. And in that way, I could introduce movement into the area. And then his brain took it the rest of the way. Right? Like you was able to stimulate the same mechanisms that would give him this, but gave him that. So that was a big piece, a big learning for me, in that whatever shows up, really just trust you can default to level 1 or just the principles, weighing, jiggling. I remember taking his knee and then just creating vibration. And then that went down into the hip a little bit. And what used to move together started to differentiate a little bit. And you've all had these experiences. Hey, my ride just hit a roadblock, or I mean, my body did. Let me see what's going on here. Okay, she's asking if the bear can replace me. I'll tell you what, folks. We're going to work with the bear this morning, but I'll get a body for this afternoon session. Okay. All right, that was a... Okay, we're back on camera. All right, well, I'll continue on with my list. But then perhaps with the bear, I can cover some of the ground, or we can get into an open discussion about some subject matter that can inform the second half of the day. Lucy, I found gallon for helium stronger than, oh my gosh. Lucy, thank you for looking into that and posting it. Super cool. Yeah, I think anything that's got that resilience can help. Because I sometimes wonder whether or not I'm going to blow these things open. Okay, that's my balloon piece. Oh, and the other thing too, again, I think we talked about just shifting weight and feeling very sensitively how like our body comes on. Like, so how this weight transfers into my arm, and then how it might transfer into my hip. And then on this side, how it's going into my hand, and I feel my hand, and then I feel my bicep kick in, but I also feel my right hip sink deeper into the table. You might even find that having the TheraBand in your fingers and the balloon, you can kind of weigh and play around with your body mechanics with a water balloon in your hands while hanging on to the TheraBand. This is another go-to way to explore what's possible in terms of keeping your chops up in the absence of a body. Let me set this down. So folks, what we might be able to play with now, in the absence of a body, would be circling back around to Mentastics a little bit in terms of approaches to getting them across, getting the points across to clients. So a question I have right now is, you can do this by your little show of hands. If you click your little button or thumbs, is that do all of you have daily, like a daily movement practice? just check that. There you go. Yeah, I completely agree with respect to doing Mentastics. And it's so interesting because Milton came to this work through Mentastics. You know, he had to figure out how to move in such a way to deal with his own low back issues at an early age. But he also just found that movement made him feel good. And I think a lot of his backstory is covered in Jack Liskin's Moving Medicine, which is just a really fun book to discover who Milton was. So I find that, in fact, I just came out of a group meeting, a group practice meeting with a chiropractor, laser therapy, biophotomodulation, cold laser therapy, acupuncture, and myself. We were, and let's see, well, there's cryotherapy, salt sauna, and infrared sauna options. And it's amazing how my perception of all of the cases that came through there were embodiment issues and movement issues. And even though it's an integrated wellness center with some really sensible people and well-developed skill sets, they were really focused on treating the symptomology. And they had some really effective protocols, but I was the only one in the room saying, well, what do they do? How old are they? You know, like 40-year-old teachers with like severe arthritis, back issues, standing issues, a 30-year-old with arthritis, so frozen shoulders, any number of things. And no one was asking about who they were, you know, like what their lifestyle choices were and how they embodied themselves. And that if you do any of these treatments, are you doing anything to get them to change who they are in their body? Well, one quick interruption here. Everybody see this? This is Moving Medicine. Let me get the glare. There we go. This is for you, Lauren. And the book is by Jack Liskin, Liskin. Probably available on Amazon, certainly through the USTA. Jack Liskin is a physician's assistant and longtime practitioner and friend of the California community, and that's his book. Or that's actually Milton's biography. So yeah, so circling back through that, nobody's talking about teaching people anything. Like how to care for themselves in between. Now I have with them, I have the document that I provided on my webpage, which kind of thematic movement exercises. I've refined that, corrected the typos and everything. It's on their letterhead now. But then I also put in a lot of mindful breathing exercises, you know, body scan awareness type stuff to help people de-escalate, because I get a lot of anxiety patients, addiction. Actually, on Thursday, I have three more veterans coming through over there, different than the guy I'm working on here. But the importance of having our own practice for our own comfort, but so that it's so deep and evident that it's working for us that we can convince somebody, our client base, to do a little bit each day. Because I can send them home with the document and say, you know, here, take 2 teaspoons in the morning, 2 teaspoons in the evening. But if they just read the prescription, yeah, take 2 teaspoons in the morning. Take 2 teaspoons. But they, you know, if they read the document but never do it, then nothing's going to happen, at least in between sessions. And that's where the leverage is in this model. Right? So I know the first 2 modules we looked at, just kind of deferring to the weekly Mentastics module that's available to all of us. Lots of different takes on how to go through things. But let's get into some of it. I think that Lucy's got a question here. Okay, yeah, all right. So what a request and a way we could go about this is I could show you the Mentastics, like a whole session of Mentastics that help with body mechanics. Something like that, you know, so we can work on weight and like shifting weight, compression Mentastics. The figure 8 one was this help organize the body, for the around the clock. Okay, and I'll use the bear so you can kind of see it in context. But because it's not a real body, the Mentastics piece will be all of it. Okay. Now, in the document that I have on my website, I think it was in the first homework exercise, I kind of break things down by kind of like a schematic of how we can approach Mentastics from many different angles to find a way in to connect with our clients and then ideally ensure some compliance. And in addition to that document, in the Traeger Sri Lanka summary document, there's I think it's page 6 or 7 in there. I do the same thing. I have a complete breakdown of that schematic. Because again, I was teaching these folks in a short period of time how to take care of themselves, because they had back pain, headaches from 10 and 12-hour days of like working on the floor with a line of clients out the door all day long. That kind of a thing. They were just getting hammered. So, and what they found with the Mentastics themselves is that they could treat longer. They didn't have pain, they didn't have headaches. And had I only taught them Mentastics, it would have been worth the whole effort. But what was really interesting is that the physical therapists now did all of their mobilization techniques from the feet. They said, hey, just, you know, they took everything they knew and started shifting weight with it. And they realized that the body and the structure became the handle, and they were so acute at being able to observe how they could reach the action at a distance. All right. So in that schematic, I talk about we can, and especially in a level 1, we get into Mentastics of weighing. Right? I'll just break this down and then we'll get to the bear. That, you know, we play with the weight of the arm and we allow it to drop a little. We're feeling the weight, we're feeling the rebound. Here we have the jiggling component, this water balloon quality, and how we can, I'm going to back this up a little bit, and how we can actually start to create some soft movement in the hand. Okay, now let's see. Yeah, so we have some soft movement in the hand. And then through awareness, what parts of my hand do I feel flopping around, like the bones in the sack of the skin of my hand, or not just the skin, but the connective tissue. Yeah. All the while, I'm kind of driving the movement of my hand, dribbling my tricep. So if I get that little jiggle happening, and it can be subtle, that's what I'm after. And then my hand just naturally finds a way to move to keep that dribble. So that's kind of your weight and jiggling principle Mentastics. And here's our classic one. And to me, the most groundbreaking one. And I can assure you that it was this very Mentastic that got me walking the same day I did what I did. Instantly, I'm like, I got to shift weight as much as I can, but not too much. So so the first thing I did when I hurt my foot, and I've got pictures of it, you'll see, you know, I got some purple everything. But I immediately, soft knees, I could stand in my base, but I needed to map out what was up. So I shifted weight forward. All my toes moved and gripped. I'm like, okay, I didn't break anything. Could have fractured something or could have done something other dicey or something, yeah. But, you know, it helped me say, okay, I can go that far. I could go back on the heel. I'm like, all right, cool. So that motion is available to me with a sense of structural integrity. And I say that, this idea of structural integrity, because I needed to know I was secure standing on my feet. People for Parkinson's need to understand that. Older clients that might just through less movement feel more precariously perched standing. So it's a good idea to be like, map out the confidence zone. So I leaned forward, my toes happened. I was cool here, leaning back. And now I got to go into the territory where I know I'm going to find some mischief, right? And likely some pain. So I got 50% of my weight, kind of really, I'm in the crosshairs of each foot. And I start to go 51, 49. 52, 48, right? And I start to go out to the side. And because I'm still, my foot's still flat on the floor, I can kind of sink my weight into the knee and go, wow, in that position, straight down, I still have everything. I can feel other stuff happening, but that tells me a lot. And then I slowly pour it back. And as I pour it back, even though there's not that much weight, I'm starting to take the ligaments a little longer, a little different, right? Now I've got that that range of motion where the sprain occurred, and I'm like, wow, on a superficial level, I could feel what happened at that layer. Now I won't go through everything about it, but that's the detail that I took just shifting weight into, to know that it was going to be okay for me to take a walk in nature, barefoot, to get to a stream with some really cold water, put my feet up, work. So I had the power of nature. I had the sensual experience of walking barefoot, which was really soothing. And I had the support of a really cold stream after a heavy, heavy rain. And that was the context that my body had to say, what's the most appropriate physiological response to what happened. And this redefining ourselves to our functional mind through our own movement is the whole game. Whether we're doing it to ourselves or the practitioner's doing it to the client on the table. So this is another powerful weight Mentastic, or a principle-based Mentastic. Now, we played last week with the balloon. So here's that context again. You feel the weight pouring from hand to hand, right? Or rocking back and forth. One that gets overlooked, and that I kind of like, and there's actually 1.5. Because elongation, we can feel elongation when we're lengthening through a leg, which we'll get to. But this idea of sculpting, it's just feeling this kind of tactile mapping of an area that might not feel really good. And I'm going to have to go back to my ankle again, because I touched it a lot. Hey, it feels really good here. It feels really good there. It's really dicey right there. And before the bones went into place, or the one bone, whatever was going on, I didn't have an x-ray, but there was one spot that just lit up like a Christmas tree until I heard that pop again a couple hours later, and then all that went. But that, again, that tactile mapping, right? Somebody says, wow, my back hurts. Well, that's like, 6 square feet. But then when you go and you start to touch it, you find that it's this small area. And that can reframe a lot for people. So this idea of sculpting can be helpful. Yeah. So this is something that I may explain this very scenario to somebody. Like, hey, wow, I just totally blew out my ankle and I had a full schedule. I mentioned it. I had clients, a gig, a 3-mile walk into the woods on Sunday, carrying gear. Yeah, it was pretty. Yesterday I just sat and typed, but this whole week I have today standing, clients tomorrow, Thursday and Friday. So I'm going to be on my feet. And when I speak to somebody about this, I'm going to be like, dude, like, you got to try this stuff out. And I won't say that, but it will really be coming through. So the sculpting can be helpful to just kind of feel what's going on in the system. For an elongation, there's just sometimes doing something like this can be really helpful. This like that Miss Piggy, right? Oh, mom. This idea, just to feel this length and the shape of me. Okay. Something I found that was really helpful in the context of setting up the dynamic between my client and I is that I do explain I'm going to be teaching some therapeutic and mindful movement exercises. And the idea is to take them outside of their socialized, habituated movement patterns. So the idea is to not be yourself, not disown who you are, but let's introduce another aspect of yourself that doesn't exist yet. We'll discover that through these movements. Okay, so there's that sculpting piece. I like to do sometimes neck, shoulders. I'm a drummer, so I'm constantly just feeling through my hands. Because I tweak these a lot sometimes. And this can feel really nice. Okay, so don't leave that one out. I might not start with that. Might be a session or two in where I explain, you know what, I'm just kind of running my hands, over the surface of your leg, whether it's on jeans or yoga pants or skin. I'm just there highlighting and your sensory awareness of this is where this is your edge. Like this is the edge of you. And this is where I'm meeting you. And that's all we're doing here. Hey, this is the container I'm in. There's the edge. This is what it feels like. So we've got some wave, we've got jiggling. Again, this is a gesture of elongation. wait, and then hang, that kind of an idea. Through meeting your client, working with them on the table, and maybe a post-movement pre-session movement exploration. You know, how does your neck feel? How does your shoulder feel? Sometimes I start with that, sometimes I don't. When I do come back around, I have a sense of where they're at in terms of suggestion and what movement from the table really spoke to their system. Okay. I also have observed too how the pauses affect them and how much input followed by a pause yields a particular response. So now in a vertical state, I might explore that in terms of movement. In the sense that while they liked it when it was really random and open and changed frequently, or they responded better when it was just boring and repetitious. Because both do work, and sometimes we have to hang with something just to get a sense that they're getting the feeling. So those are some other ways to explore making sure you're connected with your client. You know, and much like at the table, that we want to go deeper with eyes closed sometimes, but when we're working with the client, it's really beneficial to keep your eyes open so that you can see where they're at with it. Okay. Compressions, jiggling, sculpting, elongation. Compression is this is the way I play with compression. Since compression's more around the ribs, I think that teetering the rib cage can bring that idea into the mix. It's not going to be weight bearing, but will help them draw on the memory of the movement of the compression. Okay, so I tend to, if they're capable, kind of put their hands on your ribs, and then crunch one side, not crunch, but just compress and teeter back and forth. This will be my first piece to work on some rib cage elasticity. Okay, so I'd be here with this idea. Maybe boingy, boingy, boingy quality to it. And I would explain that it's like that I do this all the time. And it would be evident because then I say, then you take it into a circle. And because I do this all the time, that circle is there for me to model. And this is basically a compression. This lengthens. I take it forward a little bit and then compress there. Now I open back here. I compress in the front. And around I go. And if I do this with soft knees, I get this almost like the old screwdriver type of handheld screwdriver type of gyration. But think about what's happening. I mean, we're like, what's the spine doing? It's got this three-dimensional swirl happening, and the ribs are articulating at the spine, and the intercostals are going compression, elongation, compression, elongation. And the hips are kind of doing a little tilty thing. And that low back is flexing and extending front, back, and lateral leg. We're doing all of this. It's all happening. And then with the rib cage moving and the scapula's kind of pinned open a little bit, subscapularis gets a little bit of wiggle wiggle. And sometimes getting into those types of details can be helpful. It's like, hey, you came to me with some shoulder pain and some upper thoracic pain from hunched over, you know, you're a little stuck here, you know, or you opened during the session with some length. This is going to speak and touch all bases. So that's a nice little compression, elongation, rotation. Hits a couple of those movement bases. But again, with the softer knees, it allows for, this is what it might look like from the side. And the more I move, and demonstrative of this practice, and share stories of how it gets me out of either situations or just keeps me in comfort when I need it, the more they're likely to anchor the idea that, hey, this is good medicine, right? That this is the moving medicine that we're looking for, right? I think I put in, a couple other ideas in that whole list are that there's body specific, there's principle specific, there's, you can context things into their day-to-day based on their dominant movement patterns. There's imagery. Maybe imagining other situations, like we have this idea of water skiing. So I run through a couple of different things, and one of the demographics that I leverage a lot of are dancers that, or Broadway actors. In fact, if you've ever taken one of Roger's classes, he draws a lot on the theatrical world in terms of how we can embody new ideas, and they inform new movement expressions. And I have literally used in every one of my client bases, or every one of my clients, the idea of Seagrass in the Broadway play Little Mermaid, or a gazelle in The Lion King, or cats in the movie Cats, and how we can engage in adult play to just really get out of the Michael that's causing the problem. Any feedback, any input, any questions about particular clients or client situations? You can type it in the chat. Okay, thank you, Ada. We'll do more with the bear in the context of this. Oh, wow. All right, Marty. Yeah, right? This goes way back to the core of this stuff. You probably, do you remember Jim and Carol Day? That was my hub for this stuff. Right? And they were all, oh, okay, well, they were New Jersey people. But that's where, like, everybody circled through. Kathy Hammond and Dean would come through there, you know, and they were just, oh, they actually had a Mentastics and yoga synthesis back in 1991, you know, born out of this work through their experience in the 80s. But because massage and body work, you know, there's lots of this happening, became the focus. Obviously, the table work portion becomes the dominant, sexy, shiny piece in the room. Shiny, yeah. Gary was there, Bill Scholl was there. Sheila Merle was my intermediate instructor in Mill Valley up at our house there. Yeah, so I really get, or what I want to say is I really feel like, especially after this morning's experience at the Wellness Center, and again, beautiful people, a great model, they do help people, but when I see protocols going, you know, 30, 60, 90 days without anything offered to do in between. As a trachea practitioner, I'm just like, okay, let's see here. We got the, again, that's not a judgment. It's just okay, medial knee pain, anterior knee pain. So let me see if I can get my feet here. Now I just need to move my. So one of the things that I find in general is that people's adductors aren't activated as much as they could be and as much as would be beneficial. And I see this actually through yoga. So a lot of, and yoga in New York City, and then people with foot and knee pain and compromises in their yoga practice. So a lot of what I like to do, just in general, whether people have weight out in their feet or on the outside edges of their feet, okay, I'm not seeing the images, but it was in Varyus and valgus, right? So you have your knees like this, or they're out. I can't make that position because of this foot. But this whole idea of what the legs are up to, so if you have a collapsed arch you're in, or if you're just really having more bow-legged and the legs are out a little bit. You know, you also have gait issues. I know a lot of people that walk like this. So the outside edge of the foot comes down and then in. This kind of a thing. This is really common. So a lot of what I start with, again, mapping out the foot, finding the bullseye, the crosshairs, okay? And then if people have knee pain, just standing knee pain, I'll have them soften their knees, and I'll just have them draw their legs together a little. So now right now, my adductor's a little jiggly, and I'm just gonna imagine I'm squeezing something in between my legs. This is off, that's on. And all automatically, just by doing this, I gather all the muscles in my leg, okay, and I feel like I'm structurally more intact. And I can learn to walk this way. I don't have to overdo it. I don't have to force it, or if it does come on, I can go, okay, well, what's half of that? Yeah, actually, when you do that, if you think about taking your legs and spiraling them down into the ground like a corkscrew, lengthen from your psoas, and you'll go from standing like this, and I'm just going to push down into the ground like this, and I can get a lot more length out of me. And then if I walk from that point, I've taken out the slack, top to bottom. Hang on, folks, just need to plug in my phone. Okay. That can clean up a lot of ankle issues, knee issues, and I think it was actually Gail. I want to get the story right, but we played around with just, you can do it here at the adductor, but you could also do it at the feet. So I don't know how close I can get you to my feet here. I'm just going to go right above them so maybe you can see them move a little bit. Let's see how. So that's more of an adjustment in the lower leg. I'm not really activating my adductors here. But this is more coming from my feet, where I'm just sliding them, because again, the the tendency, depending on how flat the sole of the shoe is or the surface is, weight goes down and it spills out until the structure stops it. So this is more of a participatory engagement. Okay, and then the converse of that, if you have people that are dropped like this, obviously you aren't going to emphasize this. We're going to look at pushing out. Right? So here I ground my heels a little bit, and I try to send energy out that way. So I'm just pushing through my feet, extending through my feet. So here's my knees relaxed. Here's me being activated in my feet. Just watch what happens in the legs. It's subtle, but I can assure you that it's a radically different feeling through my lower leg. And I'm really grounded, and I can just feel more robust in my stance, right? So now if I'm hanging out here like this, right? This is one way, but if I get into my structure, I can gain an inch or two. But it's coming from activating the legs and really creating an opposition of force down. You know, just like a rocket ship, you need force down to take the rocket up, right? It's the same idea. I'm just really pushing into the floor and lengthening. So I would say, Marvin, that for me would be not so much a mentastic per se, but you know, using this idea of awareness of spiral. Okay, so the spiral out. So this, I'm kind of grounding my heels on that, Lucy. So yeah, but ideally most of the sole of the foot, but I feel myself anchored into the heels, and as I spiral out, okay, then I can place my little toe on the ground, and then so I'm kind of spiraling out from the heel, and then I place my little toe on the ground, and then I lay the rest of my foot down. And I don't have like those toes that people that can, you know, type, you know, they're really independent. My whole foot just kind of flexes like I'm waving. But, you know, this work really helped create space, like all the washing the socks. I used to wear tight dress shoes and walk on a cement floor in an office. You know, I didn't have like monkey feet, but now there's so much, you know, 30 years out there like they are. So, you know, getting people to investigate what's possible in terms of the dexterity of the foot, how are they engaged in that, might lead to an awareness that can help them fix some things or adjust some things. And now I'll share a story. Or let me just circle back. Marva, did that help with your question? Okay, that was a thumb? You're muted. Okay, cool. All right, thanks. Great. No, it's a great question because we're movement educators. And we don't need to know. All we need to trust in is our capacity to guide people into greater awareness. People with back pain, I noticed while I was sitting there doing Mentastics with somebody, that she was leaning forward and gripping onto her toes. This is somebody that had a really locked psoas, 8 years of back pain after surgery. She was the one thrown from the horse that I might have shared earlier on. Did you share the horse? I know Laura's probably heard the horse story. So now I tell her, hey, you know, I'm noticing you're gripping your toes. Every time you find yourself gripping your toes, soften your knees, shift your weight back and see if that helps. And a week later, she comes back. And this is somebody that's compliant, that is so tired of being in pain. She's like, anything, I'll do anything. She's like, you would not believe how often I grip my toes. It's such a default unconscious pattern. She got her feet back. Tension in the feet went away. Right? The lower leg muscles softened up a little bit. She could swing me about more easily. Hip rotators started to calm down. Psoas got a little more movement. And all of this up here could move a little more freely. If I'm leaning forward, holding my toes, I can move from like my rib cage up. Okay, so I can do this, my knees are locked. But if I soften all of that up, it just becomes a really different feeling. Sense of gravity. Now, in terms of, we were talking, I mentioned gait, where people might be, I'll say, either duck foot versus pigeon toed. I had one guy come in Sri Lanka. They were on a honeymoon, he and his wife. And his ankle, his arch was dropping, and his ankle, or I should say the tibia was kind of slipping down into the arch. He's like, oh yeah, I have surgery. I'm going to have surgery. My doctors tell me, I need to repair this. And they booked me for a private yoga session. And I saw that instead of teaching them yoga, I taught this guy how to walk. All he had to do was send energy to the outsides of his feet and not collapse on strut. He wasn't using anything in his legs. It was just gravity winning. And I got him to walk with corrected feet. It didn't fix it right away, but in the hour that I had with him, it changed everything. And it's not rocket science, it's just this Mentastics process. Well, what? So I looked at it and I'm like, has anybody taught you to walk at all or change how you walk? He's like, no. Okay, what does it look like when you put weight into the outside edge of your feet? And the whole thing corrected. I'm like, how's that feel? He's like, wow. It's like, can you take a step with that? And you had to kind of put the heel down and then send weight to the outside edge of the foot and figure out how to do that. And he didn't master it, but his honeymoon had this subplot of reorienting his walk. And at the very least, he could have gone home and gotten, could either sessions or just continued with this. But in the entire gauntlet of the medical world, no one ever said, hey, could you do this? Or what happens when you do this? So there's that. Cool, we've got a good amount of time to play with the bear on the table. Are you guys good with want a pee break or a water break or a pause before we get into the next 45 minutes? Okay, I got a thumb, so I'll let that be a yes. I'll drink something too. Let's break. It's 11:14, so within 5 minutes, cycle back to your cameras. Cool. And I'll pause the recording. Hey, folks. Slowly repopulating here. I started the recording again. Hi, Renee. Thank you for showing up. Oh, you're still muted, Renee. I'm sorry.
You seem to have recovered totally from your.
I'm pretty good. Actually, it was yesterday that I could actually walk with the full spring off the toes.
Yes.
The one place that's actually dicey for me is right where the plantar fascia comes into the talus.
Oh.
Like, so, like right at the front of my heel feels like I'm stepping on a nail. And not a classic spot for sprain pain, but that's probably been the most inhibiting piece.
Yeah.
But aside from that, I'm okay.
Well, that's wonderful.
It's
really amazing for that.
Yeah, it's got all the coloration of, my middle. Actually, it was, the blood came into the foot, and then it drops to the lower side of the foot, and then it winds up in the toes, and so all that's going on. But,
so there was
very
damage,
little.
But you healed yourself. It'll take time to let the blood get back.
Sure. I mean, there's also, I'm not going to be jumping or running, do like trail running and at this, because there's absolutely some ligament strain. I think the big thing that a lot of this work has taught me is the resilience of the body, keep the mind out of the way of what it knows to do.
Yes.
So.
The mind, it's very powerful. Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Oh, no, yeah. And again, I think a number of you have had similar stories. I can remember the one thing that Dean did was in my very first class, he talked about, keeping the mind kind of out of the mix. He said somebody had a session, came off the table, was a little spacey, right over on the ankle. The classic response. He put her back up on the table, worked her foot, got her to calm down. And again, that swelling piece, each time you go, ow, my ankle, there's a psychological response to the injury. So there's that physical response, there's the tissue tear, we need to send X amount of whatever to these coordinates. But then the mind's in there, wow, and I can tell you this too, that this group is really the only group that knows that I did this. People at the Wellness Center, I didn't tell them about it. I told my band members about it because they were going to see me hobbling around, and because I had to play and pound my foot for 3 hours against the bass drum. They were going to see me, I had to ask for some help to load in, load out. I didn't tell my mom. I didn't tell anybody else. So I didn't make it a story. That was also a big piece. And that was also the challenging piece for me. Because then it's like, hey, can I help you out with something? It's like, well, yeah, sure. No, I kind of stayed in the theme of this whole training, this program. What are default patterns? How to have just a really crazy incident in the middle of a really busy schedule and keep it as small as possible. And keep the self-care piece installed in the whole mix. And so I think we're all back. Or for those that have floated or still floating around, we'll be on video. So I've got the bear set up, and I'll play around with Mentastics at the table for different, how we can take the table work and turn it into a Mentastics protocol. Now, by a show of thumbs, has anybody been in a training where they do maybe at session or day 4, in particular beginning training, I learned this one from Roger, where he does a complete session run through of Mentastics, or of all the moves at the table, but as a Mentastic session. Right, where like everybody's out in the room, great. You know, I'm seeing some thumbs pop up and some heads go no. So basically you have a big room and all the students, and they stand there and it's like, okay, we're at the table. You know, and our hands are doing this. Just letting you kind of see me a little more easily. So we're at the table. And he goes through every move as if we had a body part, but it becomes a full Mentastic session. So you kind of learn how to do the session protocol by doing the Mentastics or the movements in your own body that support the move protocol. And it's a genius idea. So, oh yeah, she was probably the one that really gave birth to that idea. Yes, and everyone, yeah, kind of click into your move mode. Thank you. Let me get to, where is my, there it is. Okay, yeah. Oh, okay, yeah, you kind of do it's an air session. Thanks, Marty. So I would suggest that just again, get that body happening, stay in the trigger body. We'll play with it with the bear. Right, so I'll work with the bear, with the modeling, and then I'll just do the Mentastic, just stepping away from the table. And we'll just get a run through there on a couple of things. I'll do like one side of the body, and then flip them over and do the other side, or her. Sorry, got to be gender specific here. Okay. There's the bear. I'm going to pin the other video. Oh, all right, that video is already pinned. Oh gosh, I apologize. You haven't seen me talk. I apologize on that one. But speak, not talk. Okay. All right, here's the bear. This is a new move for the bear. You lift by the cervical spine. You bring them up a little bit closer to the table now. All right. So one of the things that I love to do to just get myself into my legs and feel my weight again is we've got cat's paws. Right? His shoulders are a little further away because his head's big. And I might be more in here. And then that whole thing is just this. It's just this positing back and forth. I'm just here, cat's paws. Right? And you can do this with the water balloon. I can even, while I'm shifting my weight side to side, I can lean forward a little bit and add more compression. So I don't have to do that with like arm strength. I just lean my weight forward by bending one knee. So now I'm not only going side to side, but I'm also leaning forward a little bit. Now obviously there'd be some resistance there, but it's that idea to anchor the possibility of that kind of a movement. Go side to side, I'm up, posture's good, but then I want to take it a little deeper. Sometimes I come in around the sternum, and then I'll play with the weight there. So there's your shifting weight. Fantastic. If you have the water balloon or a head, same rhythm. And again, one of the things you can draw from when you're instructing clients is, decide they've already have in their system this pacing, right? Like they feel you just rocking the head. So when you start to model what it is that you're looking for them to explore, you're gonna have that feeling quality in it. And you can also refer. It's like, remember just that easy feeling when I was working on your shoulders, so that this is the kind of idea that I'd like you to explore in terms of shifting weight. So that's another, just a real simple one. In terms of the neck, Roger gets into swan neck. That's another one, but it's another weight shifting one. So I'm leaning my weight back. I'm leaning my weight forward. So don't underestimate the power of shifting weight. It can heal sprained ankles and impart a really cool feeling. That's one. And now you can watch. This is. I'm not using my arms here to do this. I'm shifting my weight forward. I'm shifting my weight back. And I can use my arms now to create a little bit of interference to get this a little more dynamic lengthening in the shoulder. But most of it's coming from the use of my weight. And then I can add that compression. I can lean my weight forward. Goes down and in. So there's that. Now I'm going to come, since we're kind of in this weight shifting compression idea, I'm going to demo rib compressions here on this side, but I'm going to come back around and do the Mentastic here. And this can also go for low back. But if I'm doing, say, the pinwheel, right, I've got taking these ribs this way. The lower ribs are going to go down and lengthen and then over and across. I'm never going straight down on these guys. It's not a CPR model. Right? So I'm just following the shape of the bear or the shape of the rib cage or the stuffing inside. And my hands, I can rotate and gather the skin to take some slack out. But then it's the weight that takes that shape in that direction a little further. So as a Mentastic, I can play around with just this idea, and where I'm really learning to speak with my front leg. So now I'm kind of at the bear and just bending into the knee and maybe letting the hip come out a little bit. And then I practice and I can detail. Maybe I can bounce a little bit from the front knee. And I can also discover for myself what range of motion in a bent knee do I have the most dexterity. I don't want to be way down here where now they become a handle for my balance. Right? I want to be in my range of control so I can speak very specifically and respond to subtle resistance. So if I come in with a lot of weight, or I sink, I can easily go, I can get myself out of the way. Right? And then obviously the hands can detail that. So I might just hang out and do something like this. And then switch it up a little bit and see, this actually feels good on my leg. Yoga was another big piece of my rehabilitation. because I was able to do like a seated practice and lengthen my leg, do certain stretches to see how that translated into the tissue of the ankle. So it wasn't all in vertical that I did my investigation. But it definitely kept movement. Has been essential here, in between good amounts of rest. So again, I can, hands. The only time I really have my hands away or out from my center is when I'm leaning on something. Right, so we could also do this for the hip. So this idea. And I'll do that on the other side with him. But again, increasing your dexterity with your feet will allow you to create shapes in their body and movement in their body with these larger muscles that have a lot more energetic inventory or reserve. And that allows your hands to do a lot of the more specific detailing. I can be, from my feet, I can bounce. I can quicken it up, I can sink in. And then my hands can actually, together, and create a whole new. The other thing too, if you think about the lower portion of the body, your legs, they're keeping the rhythm. And they allow for you to, so as I do this and let go, they're going to rebound and go the other way. If I keep that rhythm in my leg, I'm going to catch them right where they're at. So I can move my hands around and still have their rhythm. So I'm not doing just this and then stopping and doing something like this. But I can actually work side, step up, keep the ribs, or keep the ribs or the abdomen. We'll work across, lean back, but the rhythm is kept within my feet. So that's another way that the Mentastics of shifting weight can really inform the, or really develop your ability to keep rhythm as you make more dynamic transitions. And in particular with the rib cage, you don't want it to be so much pieces and parts, but this integrated whole that's multi-directional, can take lots of shapes. And if you get that really solid, funny choice of words, if you can create some fluidity in this part of the structure, their sense of it being like a box or a safe on some legs, all frozen up, all of a sudden it starts to experience these subtle articulations. Their breath can become deeper, more inspiration. Metaphorically, that's a great idea. From an energy level, more oxygen's a great idea. And I find that when I do work the chest, that a lot of that's coming from the lower legs. Okay. Again, shifting weight. We talked, I'll demonstrate it again. We talked a lot about, or we looked at the around the clock infinity symbol. Right? So I think the bear can cop this a little bit. But it's that same idea. I have a wider stance, so I'm shifting my weight up and dancing myself back to the other way. And I'll do this without the bear, but to just illustrate, I have the foot flexed, the knee breaks a little bit, I lean my weight in, and I can just wave the leg and shift my weight here. All right, so again, that shifting weight and getting dexterous with the knee flexion and extension, how that feels, where my comfort zone is, or my confidence zone is. So I lean in, I step up, the work's in front of me, and then I step back down, heel down, and then the leg comes out. So from this side of the table, I step up, and I come back down. Step up, and I come back down. Step up, come back down. So if I were just going to play with that in the middle of the floor, something like this. So I'm you know, I mean, you could look at that as a dancing, la, la. Right? It's actually a pretty fun movement to have in our own system, or have available to us. So I'm just, you know, and I can lean it in. Another thing that I do with this is sometimes I'll come in and then I'll bring the leg up a little bit and there's resistance. So I have to back out of it. So I can roll on up and roll back. And this is what my feet look like when I do that. So they get both of them in there. Okay. So, you know, I might roll on up and then I roll back. So now I'm in more of a Tai Chi position here. That I could play around with holding his weight or her weight as I just practice some Mentastics. So I have some bent knee, some hip rotation, pelvic rotation. So these are great ways to keep the body informed. And then there's the full movement. Up, down, and I go. Something like that. And then I'll put it out, up, down, and back around. And again, that forms the foundation for, I'm using the larger muscles to get the movement, and all my arms are doing is holding a bent knee. And they can be there to listen and feel for subtle things, which is really important. And most importantly, making sure the knee stays safe, right? So that they start to let go. Because that's from my experience, most people are tracking their knee. First off, they've never let go of the leg to that degree, but they also don't want to hyperextend it on the way down. So your sense of grace in that gesture is pretty powerful. Right? It's essential. Right? Cool. In terms of rocking the leg, I mean, again, shifting weight. Right? I remember Bill Scholl's telling me that never let your hands leave your belly button. Right? So in our world, that makes a lot of sense. Right? I was always one of these guys. He's like, Michael, where's the weight of your elbows? And my hands don't really change position that much. But all this goes away. And now I can rock. And my hands can just follow the movement up and down the leg as I shift my weight. Right? If I'm trying to move the leg, then I have to step, and then I'm kind of breaking down the flow, and interrupting this kind of sense of the whole leg because I'm not using my legs. So I can be here, I can shift, and then I can shift again, I can step back, so you can play with bigger ranges of stepping, and practicing that. You might play with maybe the water balloon's a good idea with that. You feel the rhythm of the water balloon, or have your hands around something. Ideally, you do have a person that you can work with on that. Like, hey, I'm just going to take 5 minutes and just dance up and down your leg rocking. I'm going to stop at the ankle and maybe add a little bit more play with the weight of the foot. Come up, frame off the knee. We'll do another shifting weight with the knee circle. Okay, so I'll demo what it looks like here, and then I'll go to the bear. So when I come in for that knee circle, my arms have this going on. Okay, but if I add this, the movement just becomes more voluminous, and it's more, both of us are moving together more so than me moving my client. And they experience that difference. And so that's foot forward. My legs are just the same idea. It's getting dexterous with the bent knee. You can wave the knee. You can step one leg up and flop the knee. It's another way to go about it. Now, one of the things that I often give my clients are seated Mentastics that are also for the pelvis and the legs. And we get a healthy dose of that when we're doing the footwork, right? So, and you can do it when you're driving. But one of the things that is also important to play around with, just as a Mentastic, I like to feel and create a lot of movement from sitting. Right, so that there's this piece happening. So now my foot's on the floor. Okay, let me see what Laura has to say. Lauren has to say. Sorry about that. Lauren, just real quick, I do both depending on the size of the client. I found that in some of the circumstances, it just seemed like a better idea to start standing more. Depends on the clientele, comfort of the client. And then what I tend to do is save sitting for later in the day. So I can play around with standing. And then if I do need to pause or be off my feet a little more, then I'll sit. But I actually do sit on the table a lot throughout the session. So like when I'm here, I'm giving my legs a break, creating movement through just my pelvis here. And boy, that's just like flexion, extension, flexion, extension, flexion, extension, right here at the hip. So there's a little flexion. It's a little opening. This is getting a different experience of it. It's just a really lovely way to set, keep rhythm. So I have this, and I can go right on into my bell clanger kind of idea. I can lean on in and get the, I don't even know if I can kick out slack in the bear and actually get it going up. Yeah, shin's moving a little bit. So again, that movement here just keeps me like just as this, subtle wave pool from which these movements emerge when I touch somebody. If I'm static, they'll get movement, but it's going to be coming from a more fixed position. And this is, again, you can do this with your feedback clients, is let me know if you feel a difference. This versus this. And see what they might feel. And the table's going to move a little bit, but I'm not trying to move my client by rocking the table. Okay, so that's not the premise there for the movement. It's more just, I feel better when I do that, and it's easier for me to create more dynamic movement in their system when I do leverage that. this with your clients at home, unless they've signed a release. Another place, another good Mentastic is for the hula, right? Which is, it can be tricky for some. So one of the things we're up to here is almost a pivot. Coming up, coming back down. And I'm going to get farther away here so you can see my full body do this. I'm just going to do the Mentastic, but I'm up, and then I come back into this Tai Chi type of bent back leg, right through there. Right? So I'm kind of in that. That lets me get underneath here. Okay. And I come up, so I have the arm. I step up, come back. Step up, come back. Step up, come back. And just by virtue, of me bringing this hip forward, if I step up, then I pin my left hand in, and I come back, I get the stretch. So again, I have the elbows in my hip, arm underneath the shoulder, and I can practice just shifting my weight and getting the grip on the trapezius, coming out, so I grab up on the trapezius, take the weight out there, or just give it some length. And again, like I don't want to drop all my weight into my back foot right away and pull their trapezius off the back of their head. Okay? I want to learn how to slowly shift my weight back. So this just feels like a lengthening, right? Rather than a pulling. And again, so if I step up, my hands kind of come into position. I'm going to emphasize this, but I'm going to push some weight into the back there a little bit. And then I just drop my weight back. And that allows me to give that kind of a feeling to the shoulder. So that Mentastic, again, let's get the feet in there. So a lot of it's dance. So if you folks like to dance, maybe put some music on. So for that one, I'm just kind of, I get in there and I'm set up, and then it's a whole body movement. It's not just me doing this. I'm up, and then I drop back, and I let my weight, my connection to them, and the transfer of that, the weight's going to take them through the range of motion because I have full hand contact. But my hands aren't grabbing and like kind of pulling them per se. Right? So they're not feeling my fingers tighten up too much. So at least this is the way I approach it. And then I have that other variation that I think I might have showed you. It's in one of the other videos. If the hula is hard for you to get, the table's too high, the purse is too big, another way to come into it is take the bent elbow, put it on your forearm, and then you can just kind of weigh that. And it's a little different type of a movement, but it's another way to get under there. And if you could just get that arm to rest on your forearm with a little bit of bicep engagement, you can start to mobilize the shoulder by bouncing your weight. So I don't have to do this, although I do this. But I can easily two together. So yeah, I love what I see some people bouncing, getting this kind of an idea that, you know, and even put a balloon in your hand and bounce, because that'll help you feel waves in your hands. And it might be like, in this case, it might be the anterior deltoid, or maybe you start to pick up some movement in the trapezius, and you're just sensitizing your system to your own shape and movements. And say with the water balloon, for instance, you're also perceiving sensation coming in to the hand, and you can feel what kind of movement you're actually initiating into and then back from the balloon. So this is kind of, the balloon becomes your feedback loop. You know, like, you know, you can find it's like, well, if I do this, I create a real agitated vibration in the balloon. But where do I find the rhythm of the balloon in my own movement? That kind of an idea. And it's beautiful also to have something for your hands to fall around, right? Because that's a key piece of it too. We're looking for these organic shapes, and the balloon can just help keep that, to me, the quality of your connection with the different pieces and parts of the body intact. See what comment in here. Thanks, Mark. So one of the things with that, this is a big question, and frankly, I'd love to get a piece of plexiglass to lay somebody on, and then film what my hands do underneath. Because I find that there's ways, in particular with compression and anchoring, where we can actually create some of that deeper pressure without it being massaging. But I haven't figured out how to do that yet. But I agree that I think I shared it in the last series, or the last week, where Laura Lynn in Vermont, who's a deep tissue massage therapist, Laura Lynn Giabardo, tens of thousands of clients over decades of massage, and a 30-year trainer practitioner, and has a lot of people that are like, new client comes in, it's like, wow, I really want deep massage. And she says, do you want me to go deep, or do you want to stay out? And, you know, they're like, and that opens their mind to just this conversation about exactly what you're talking about, Marty, that there's more impact and influence, and there's more of an experience that they can actually leverage to come out of whatever they're showing up for. Now, I mean, massage is great, it feels good, but to also have that option for people and get them invested in their own movement based on the experience on the table, to me, is a bigger win for them. And then they can still come back for the massage feeling if they want it. Beautiful. And I don't know this because I'm not a massage therapist. I know tables are lower. But I know the physical therapists, when they did certain things, they just did what they did, and they just really introduced a lot of movement into their own body. So I don't know if that would be similar to how massage therapists would actually add this self-care movement component to their massaging, especially if you're leaning a little more. I don't know if dropping knees would help. Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, oil is a big piece. And you're right, yeah, the weight and the compression. You know, and here's something about the compression. especially if somebody comes in with back pain, you know, and you're in here working on compressing, you know, where you've got the rib sandwich thing happening, you know, where you're compressing on the opposite side. You can tell them that you're working on their spine because the ribs articulate with the facets of the vertebra. So as you compress and free up the rib cage around the back, you're doing this to the vertebra. So you're actually getting to the spinae muscle, you know, the little different muscles that hold the spine together at the deeper level. So that's deep tissue, and you don't have to dig deep for that. The ribs are the handle and the connective tissue. And if you went through Dean's lecture, one of the beautiful, way more pleasant, Ada, one of the key things that Dean says, and I put that in my little summary, is that we're one big muscle. Right? We're all one big thing wrapped in a big sheath with some structural components also in the sac. And when we get that whole thing moving, we get the mind experiencing it as a one big thing, it can self-feed and take care of itself. It's just that the modern world doesn't freely challenge us enough for the body to be its dynamic and fluid self. You know, in particular, the feet. Right? You know, put a shoe, walk on a flat surface, repetitive strain. So no, I think the compressions really do bridge that gap. One of the things that, this is why I want the plexiglass, is that I tend to work a lot underneath, and I'll come around to the opposite side of the vertebral column, and I'll just lean my fingers into the erectors there, and I'll compress the ribs. I don't know if you can see the bear from, I'll do it on this other camera. Okay, so I need to be on the other side. Sorry about that, folks. Okay, cool. Yeah, so I would come underneath. I can be at the lower cervicals, upper thoracics, and just kind of lift there on the opposite side of the vertebral column, and use that as a leverage point. And then the ribs are the handle to guide the movement. And my fingers are just there as some pressure for some interference. And it gets the neck and the head to just do exactly what the bear's doing. You know, and I can take it down. You can see the way the bear, it takes slack. I can be further down and do that. I could stay on this opposite side and grab the ribs here. Now that, or I can go along the inside of the rib, or on the opposite side of the sternum, and compress there. So now I have this kind of a thing happening. I'm just interfering here. I can go on either side of the spine. And I'm literally just letting my hand have some soft interference on either side of the spine, and then I compress the ribs. You know, and I'm moving from my feet, and I'm buoyant, and that kind of feeds information in the columnar or circular sense. Okay, beautiful. Yeah, yeah. I see some folks that are using this stuff. That's so awesome. And that's one of the reasons. one of the reasons why this work is really profound. Because we can get in and get deep and move structure in such a way that the size can't quite get at. I see that I kind of got excited there and ran over a little bit. So thanks for hanging with me. We'll take a break and I'll meet you back here in about an hour. Super cool.